the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, Rich Hoffman here. So you have to come to a realization, and before I say it, there's a couple levels you have to work on. So this the gay agenda, the attempt to confuse sexual roles and get the human race in a bizarre direction connected to abortion. Not to make a huge, because we tend to put these things in categories that they don't really belong in. And to make an argument, the proponents of secular belief throw everything into the category of, well, you're just a Christian right-winger. And then, of course, then Christians put everything in a nice little box and package it in a way that has sort of been accepted in the culture of that way of thinking. And I think everybody misses it. I think the problem with the depopulation movement, which is how you have to talk about it, for which the pride stuff, the transsexual stuff, the gay rights stuff, the advocacy of that kind of alternative lifestyle sexually is to facilitate a depopulation agenda, for which on an occult level, the intention is to remove humans from the earth. And if you don't really get outside your circle of influence, the people you talk to when you take your kids to the soccer game or the bowling alley or somebody's birthday party, going to a baseball game, if you don't talk broadly to people, especially around the world, you really won't know just how crazy and what a lunatic idea it is to propose this gay agenda. And the reason I'm talking about it is, of course, I have grandchildren that are coming into this age, and we talk about influences and like such as Marvel with Disney. And Disney's going through a whole, they invested in all this woke politics, and of course the making Star Wars characters gay, celebrating same-sex relationships and these things. If that's something that people do, it's something you don't really want to talk about. But the most unhealthy part of the whole discussion is that you're making a sexual lifestyle 90% of your consideration of the human experience. And it really just isn't, it really isn't a lifestyle. Speaking purely on sexual preference is like saying you like the taste of a particular wine and you're going to build your whole life out of being a wine drinker. It's really kind of silly. It's very limited, and that's also part of the agenda. And so I have been working on a book for a long time. I just finished the first revision of it. It's called The Politics of Heaven. Very proud of it. Turned out better than I expected. And I'm going to be talking about it increasingly. And it really is because I had to fill a void of consideration in order to talk about things like this. So it's one thing to say it, but if all the considerations of it existed in a theological sector of polite society, and none of those were working, then it's hard to get your mind wrapped around the true intention. And I would say, and I would offer many levels, that this isn't just a human thing. This is a hatred against the creation of God thing. The vile characters that are talked about obsessively in the Dead Sea Scrolls, for instance, the pursuit of righteousness, the destruction of evil, the coming of an apocalypse, all the warnings that come from apocryphal writing in the Second Temple period that we know of, biblical scholarship. The gay agenda is a very real thing. It's not to put people down who find themselves in that way of thinking, but it's more social than physical most of the time. And when the peer pressure groups are out there advocating for that lifestyle, it's not because they're looking for people to be happy. They're weaponizing people and their sexuality and their preference in sexuality into a depopulation agenda, an attack on the American family, or family as it is, as an institution of marriage, an institution, it's an anti-God movement at every level. And there is absolutely no other way to explain it. So I had to have some difficult conversations with my grandchildren, watch my children go through this age, and they're in their 30s now, and the social experiments that have come their way that have been advocated for openly. MTV comes to mind, but lots of songs going back to Boy George, the Culture Club, back in the 80s. And, it used to be, when I was in the high school age, being gay was a subject of ridicule because there was a fundamental feeling. There were certainly people who were gay, and I'm not saying that you go out and harass them or destroy those people and treat them poorly, but it wasn't something you openly talked about. And just like sexual lifestyles in general, you shouldn't really be out there talking about them. You really shouldn't be out there talking about what you do with your wife or your husband. It should be a private thing that happens within the institution of marriage, not casual, reckless sexual lifestyles, not swinging lifestyles where you have multiple partners and you're all over the place, can't have a commitment to building a family. I would say that the need for sexual relationships among humans is to perpetuate the human race. And anything advocated against that, or any alternative to that, is an advocacy of anti-God, anti-family sentiment meant to destroy the human race and erase human culture from the earth. And when you really dig into the occult practices behind these movements, that's what you find. And to be honest about it, you have to kind of talk outside your normal social groups. So as I said, I just finished the Politics of Heaven, which I'm very proud of. And I definitely, I think, go to great measures to prove what I'm saying. But it's a 140,000 word book at the moment. It will probably hone it down quite a lot, maybe into the 120s. We'll see. I think the scope of the publisher will largely determine the length of the book. But right now it's at 150,000 words. And there's a lot to say about the subject, and as I've gone through it, it doesn't repeat. It has a good narrative, and I'm happy with its progress so far. Probably be a 2027 thing, but because it takes time for this next stage. But it's a completed manuscript, and it does what I expected it to do, and that is answer those questions on the occult level: why evils occur when we talk about the spirit world and how it interacts with the living people and the politics of those spirit world entities and how they manipulate human beings for their fulfillment. Usually when you get down to why is there a movement to destroy the human race by getting it to do things that are unhealthy for itself, whether it's not having family building and sex not being an advocate of that of that lifestyle, family building. Instead, decentralize it into a mess where sexual lifestyles are used to actually destroy the individual so they don't perpetuate themselves through birth rates. And when you really get down to the same people who are advocating for abortion, the same people who are advocating for pride events, lifestyles of same sexes, or switching sexes at will and calling yourself whatever you want. When you really dig into it, you find the same people that don't want God in the classrooms, don't want the Ten Commandments displayed in courtrooms. They want a secular society. And they also tend to like religions that are hostile to Christianity. Because the intent isn't freedom and understanding of the people. It's to use other people to advocate an anti-God fulfillment and to destroy the creation of the family under the institution and perpetuation of God's original intentions as creations of God to fulfill the promises that were laid out in the Garden of Eden, to bring heaven to earth. And the institution of marriage is one of those wonderful sentiments. So when we talk about why Marvel has gone into this gay agenda and Disney got themselves all locked up and all these woke people, it's not to pick on people who engage in same-sex relationships, but it's to understand the occult practices behind the movement to actually erase humans from the earth. And obviously, if people are in same-sex relationships, they're probably not producing children. And if they're not having kids by the time they're confused and the public education system has them all turned around, it might take them 15 extra years after they turn 18 to mature. They might be in their mid-30s and down to the last few eggs. And they may not be in birth range to have children. And then they're so busy with their individual lives that they don't do what this kind of sacrifice you have to make as a person to have a child or many children. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to have a child and a lot of work and dedication. And it's really a job for the young. And when you have these kids run around experimenting with sexual lifestyles throughout their 20s, when they really should be having children, really should be creating families, when they have the most gusto to do so, the intention is quite clear. It's a strategy of anti-God sentiment to destroy the family as we know it, to create a depopulation agenda that then rids the earth of humans. And when you have those advocates all line them all up and all their belief systems of progressive ideology, you find that that's exactly what they're advocating for. So I think the at least with Disney and the Marvel events, the movies, it was not something that people accepted openly. They've tried to slide it in through music for years, and it just didn't take. People don't really like it. They're uncomfortable with it. And I think the corporate landscape really gambled that people would be so easy to manipulate that they would fall for it. And that behind all that is these occult rituals that sort of permeate the leaders in those fields. Belief systems they have that are clearly anti-God. And the purpose of advocating for those same-sex lifestyles was clearly anti-God. And there's no other way around it. And you have to accept it for what that is. So to say at that level is one thing, and I think that's enough for most people to say, I have to admit to myself that's exactly what it is. The gay movement, the pride movement, is an anti-population movement meant to abortion, just like with abortion, to try and rid the earth of human beings, depopulate the earth so that people don't destroy the earth, because they look at the earth as an item of worship and they have to get rid of human beings in order to fulfill that worship. It's an occult practice, and it really comes down to the fundamental beliefs of those people who advocate for it. And when you peel back the layers of their belief systems, that's really where you get. And I prove that in detail in my upcoming book, The Politics of Heaven. So it's not just saying something from a point of view of theology or religious study of any kind, or even personal belief or political belief. It's not a bullet point marker. It's a statement about occult ritual that has migrated itself into belief systems that mass migrate across cultural lines. And that there's no other way to explain it, but it's an anti-God, destroy the creation of human beings at the most fundamental level so that earth worship can conduct itself while the depopulation agenda does its work as a weapon of war. It's an ideology of war to remove humans from the face of the earth. And it's a cult in its nature. It has an ancient worship that traces back for tens of thousands of years, likely millions, and probably doesn't even originate on this planet. And so I do bring the receipts in my book, The Politics of Heaven, and go into great detail about the hows and the whys and the wheres and what do you do from here's. But for the general statement, the agenda that pushes same-sex relationships or sexual relationships in general that are reckless and outside the institution of marriage all have in common a depopulation agenda that is intended to harm the human race at the fundamental level. and there's no other way to explain it. And some people are catching on to it now. A lot of people are asking questions these days about that very topic, and we'll explore it for many more hours of work and many hundreds of thousands of words of writing. But for the statement of where we are today and where we're going, and the trend is turning in the other direction, thankfully, people don't like what the offerings were, but there's no other way but to look at it as an assault against the creation of God and the institution of marriage and the creation of families for the perpetuation of the human race upon the face of the earth. It's an attempt to erase them. And that's pretty malicious, and it's the only way that you can consider the political vantage point of that same-sex agenda so mass migrated into the overall population in general and popular culture as we have witnessed it for many years now. And it's a pretty maniacal scheme that people have, by their own conclusions, become very uncomfortable with, and they are now finding alternatives, and they're looking for answers. And I'm going to provide as many answers as I can, but for those who are uncomfortable saying it, it's okay to say. Anybody advocating reckless lifestyles and anti-family sentiment is trying to erase human beings from the face of the earth with a very vile conspiracy that can only be described as a weapon of war. And that's the sum of the political movement. And that's how we need to treat it. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
Thank you for listening. Coming soon, The Politics of Heaven.